It's the King J, back with another video. Today, we are going to talk about the Qanba new entry leverless controller. Now, Qanba have been known to do fight sticks, but this is their first leverless controller that they've done. And I wanted to get my hands on, but, you know, I wanted to get some expertise to talk about this. So we got ImortalXSoul that is on my team to talk about the new leverless controller from Qanba. So ImortalXSoul, take it away.
Yo, what's good people? Today we have a very special review. Today we have Qanba's new leverless, the Qanba Sapphire. So first of all, shout out Qanba for sending this over. This is such a sick leverless. And you know, it's very rare for me to be so excited about a new product, but I was testing the product all night last night and this is very good value for money. The feature set is crazy. So how do you actually buy this controller? Because obviously we're talking about value for money. So you have to head over to Qanba's website. Okay, so here we're on Qanba's website. This is QanbaUSA.com. So now you can see the Sapphire is $180. Now, this translates to about 135 Great British pounds. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to be the exact conversion rate. It may be a little bit more, maybe 150, but you can kind of gauge the range, the pricing range. And I think for this levelers, the feature set is insane for this price. And if you scroll down a little bit more, you can see a little bit more about the feature set. When we're talking about the features, I personally like the hot swappable switches. Even though it's quite thin, it still maintains full size switches. So in my opinion, I prefer full size switches because I feel like the actuation feels much more smooth than the low profile switches you typically see in flat boxes like your Hawk 42, so on and so forth. So for me, that's a big plus that you can actually, first of all, have full size switches, but secondly, they're hot swappable. So if you don't like the cherry speed silvers that come stock in the Sapphire, you can just switch them. Okay, let's talk about the layout. So the layout has a typical left, down, right, up. So your typical directions, and then it has your 8 attack buttons. So you have your square, triangle, X, circle, R1, L1, R2, L2, right? So this is your traditional leverless layout, but then it has R3, L3, and then it has C, which acts as your select button, macro buttons. So you can assign these to anything you want. So if you want to switch where jump is, you can assign it to either M1, M2, or M3, and so on and so forth. So any button that you want to change the orientation or where it is on the configuration, you can, which I think is quite cool. I think it's very cool that it has pins on the PCB that you can just change and configure to your liking. So that part is very cool. If we take a look under the wrist rest, there's a few extra switches as well. So as you can see, these are cherry speed silvers. And to be honest, I like speed silvers because I like the actuation of cherry and kale. So speed silvers is actually my switch of choice, which is nice. So yeah, they give you a few extra switches in the storage compartment space. And something interesting that the Sapphire has is that you can change the throw of the buttons, which means that you can change how deep they bottom out. So right now I have them on short throw, which means that they don't press down very far. But with the suction cup, I can press into a button and turn the buttons clockwise to deepen the throw. The points correspond to how deep you've actually set the actuation and the throw. So right now you can see that this button here is twisted to the left. That means that this is short throw. As you can see, this button, the one that I changed, is pointing to the right. So it's clockwise. And this means that I've set it to the maximum throw. So it's deeper actuation and deeper throw, whereas this is short throw. So you can really pick and choose how you want your buttons to actuate and feel when playing with them. And to be honest, I think this feels amazing to play on. I was playing with it, as I said before, last night for about 3 to 4 hours, and it's super comfortable, super comfortable. I felt like there was no adjustment time needed. And for me, I'm very sensitive to different buttons and layouts, and this felt perfect. I didn't really have to adjust. It just felt natural. So that was the button throw adjustment. I'm gonna actually change the throw back to short throw. As you can see, now it's switched to the left, right? So anti-clockwise, which means short throw, which is what I prefer. In the storage compartment, you'll have a little screwdriver like this, and it's dual-ended. So you just need to screw off the end to reveal one of the ends. So this is a flathead, as you can see. And now we're going to unscrew the other side to reveal a Phillips. So this is a Phillips head. So to remove the cap of the button, right, there's a small cutout. Qanba describes it as 3 o'clock, which is perfect placement. So you place it in 3 o'clock and you can just pull off the cap like this. So these caps are used for buttons that are not in use. So if you want to just cover the buttons, you can do that. I already said that I like speed silvers, but if I didn't like speed silvers and I wanted another switch, I can swap this out and replace it with a blue switch. So that is super cool. So I really appreciate manufacturers adding in that feature. I feel like it's overlooked a lot of times. It's really valuable for a player to kind of mix and match switches. I know players that use different switches for movement as opposed to attack buttons. So the fact that we can just swap is excellent. I think what's also cool about the hot swappable feature is the fact that they included a 5-pin compatibility rather than just a 3-pin. So as you can see, this switch is a 3-pin. Has a 3-pin design, right? If I wanted to use a switch that had a 5-pin, it's compatible because it has a 5-pin board, which is super cool. So again, if this was a different switch, all you need to do is, because it's hot swappable, just line up the pins as so and press down, right? Another feature that I think is super cool is you can see there's kind of these white foam inserts. This allows the cap not to bottom out on the enclosure. So this helps with noise and sound dampening. Okay, let's run through the top row of buttons. So these are your system modes. You've got PS5, PS4 and PC support. If you want to switch to PS5, you just move the switch up. PS4, move the switch down. PC, move the switch down. The 1, 2, and 3, so this one here, this is your button profile. We are going to get onto button mapping in a little bit, but this is your button profile. So the first button profile is the default. Second is the second profile, and the third is the third profile. You can customize and adjust all three and swap at press of a button, really. So before I talk about the LED section, I'm going to plug it in. So here we've got a USB locking mechanism, which is cool. So once you've inserted the USB-C cable, super thick braided cable, by the way, so very durable, which I like. So once we've plugged this in, we can now lock this cable in. As you can see, it's not being pulled out. So that's a cool feature. So obviously, to show you the LEDs, it needs to be plugged in. The way the LED ambient lighting works is that you need to have the LED switch to off. If I have this on, it will turn the LEDs on for the buttons. But if you want to have the ambient lighting on the side, you need to switch this to off and then press this glow button to switch between the cycles. As you can see, there's different lighting effects here at the sides. I'm going to show you. Has different lighting effects here, right? On the sides. So that is the way to kind of cycle between your ambient lighting on the side and then your LEDs on the buttons. I actually like the rainbow effects. This is my favorite, which is the last profile for the LEDs. So those are your LEDs. Let's move on to touchpad and C. So touchpad is, if you want to be using this button, you select touchpad and now the touchpad will function as the touchpad. You want to turn that off and use the C button. So on PC, for example, if you're playing a fighting game and you want to reset the stage, you have to hold C and then press X. So for Tekken, you would hold select and press X, whereas now you have to hold C and press X. So it's the same as select, really. I leave it on C because I don't use my touchpad for PC games. If I was using PS5 and I wanted to reset stage on Tekken, I would hold the touchpad, press X, and obviously just make sure that the touchpad portion is selected. So if I'm on PS5, I would select touchpad, which you can see, and then the touchpad would function as a touchpad button. Obviously, if I wanted to reset the stage in Tekken on PS5, I would hold touchpad and press X. So that's the way you would do that. Again, we have a tournament locking feature. So right now, my buttons at the top are working. If I lock them, all these buttons at the top will not work. So you can't get accidental, PlayStation home key presses, options key presses. It locks that, so you can't get accidental pauses in games, for example. So that's a really, really nice feature that Qanba's had for years now. So the mute function is if you have a headset plugged into the 3.5mm port and you can mute the headset and the mic attached to it. So that's a cool feature as well. Obviously, you've got your PlayStation home key. This is for the button mapping. So this is the settings button here. The button mapping can be quite confusing with this menu here, but once you get used to it, it's actually quite simple. So what we need to do to put it into button mapping mode is hold the settings button for 3 seconds. So if we hold it for 3 seconds, now you can see the controller is in button mapping mode. So it's flashing. It will flash an input on the screen. So this is up. So if I want to change up to M1, I can. Now I've done that. I'm going to leave the rest of the configuration the same. So down is down, left, left, right, right. And then it's going to flash through these inputs. So that's how to configure your buttons. All we need to do to save the configuration is just press and hold settings button once again. So it will stop flashing. And now we're back in regular mode. So we're going to get into game, but I can tell you that this leverless is amazing. It's almost perfect. I think what I would like from Qanba is duplicate inputs to these macro buttons here. For example, if I wanted a duplicate left on M2, currently I can't do that. You can only map one direction to one button. You can't have, like, for example, left here and then left here. That doesn't work currently. I would like to see a firmware update or maybe a software developed to allow us to map multiple buttons to one function. So for example, as I said before, left here and left here would be amazing. Okay, I'm going to swap to the big screen so you can actually see my inputs and how clean they are. So I picked Paul, right? Because Paul has a back sway. So you can't do the fake backdash because he'll get back sway. Look at how clean this backdash is. This is insane. And as you can see, look at my backdash inputs. You can see the down back is just frame because it's one frame, which means I'm only vulnerable for one frame in down back, which is what we want. It's perfect. These inputs are so clean. Look at the wave dash. So clean. And obviously on P2, I'm not using SLCD, which is what I would like to see, as mentioned before, in like a firmware update, because currently I would backdash like this using M2, but I can't assign M2 to left as well as having it as default left. So I would like to see that in the future. But as you can see, the inputs are so clean. I feel like the keycaps are very consistent in terms of where you're pressing them, you'll get the same actuation. Because a lot of buttons and a lot of keycaps, they will act differently according to where you actually press on the cap. So if you press on the cap right at the edge, you'll get different actuation, whereas I feel like these are very consistent no matter where you're pressing on the button, which is amazing for consistency in my opinion, because it's like even if you miss input slightly to the left or slightly to the right, you'll still get the same actuation. At the same speed of actuation as well, which is important. We're talking about, you know, inputs like this where it needs to be consistent, backdash, wave dash, so on and so forth. You need those consistent inputs. Like the movement is insane with Raven. And obviously Raven's my main character, so that's why I'm moving like this with the character. But this levelers just feels so smooth. And it's because it has full size switches. I can't stress this enough. I feel like full size switches are much more consistent and smooth, and the actuation feels so much more smooth than the low profile switches you get in most levelers devices these days. I think Qanba's decision to stick with full size switches is a great choice, honestly, because it makes the controller just feel so smooth, in my opinion. Like this movement is insane, and I'm not misinputting, you know, while standing 2. Has SLCD if I want to use that as well, as you can see. So yeah, these inputs are amazing. It feels super smooth. Crazy. Okay, let's touch upon latency. So latency for me is, if you don't know what latency is essentially the input delay and how responsive a controller actually feels. So the latency for me is important when deciding what controller to use, because I want my controllers to be optimal. I want them to be as quick as possible. I don't want any lag, and it feels like my Brookboard and it feels like my GP2040. So it doesn't lack in the latency department. It's very much on par. So that's good to see from Qanba. They didn't really, you know, cheap out on any components. The PCB feels very, very, very responsive and fluid. So if you're wondering about the latency and the input delay, there is no input delay. It's very, very, very responsive. And I'm very sensitive to input delay as well. And I can tell you that, yeah, there's no input delay. It's very, very, very quick. So again, I think my final thoughts and feelings are that the controller, I feel like personally, is extremely good value for money. If I show you the kind of width, it's quite sizable. It's obviously still thin, but it's not a flat box. So in my opinion, that's why it feels so comfortable to play with. The weight is perfect. I think it weighs 1.6 kilos. So that is a perfect weight for travel. So on the back, there are 11 screws, which obviously you use the screwdriver provided to take the screws out. There will be some rubber nibs in each of the screws. So you just kind of take them out and then unscrew. And then it actually loosens this kind of metal trim. And then you can just literally pull the plexi up, pull the art out, without replacing the buttons. So you don't even have to take the buttons out to replace the art, which is sick. I think the quality of life, the feature set, the button mapping, native PlayStation support as well, which is super important for you if you play offline or you play in tournaments. Usually tournaments are ran on console. So the fact that it has native PlayStation support, PS4 and PS5 is great. Obviously you've got the different button configuration, profile settings, you've got the different LEDs settings. For me, the feature set is crazy. So yeah, I really like the Qanba Sapphire. Let me know if you're interested in getting this Qanba Sapphire in the comments below. But that was my review. Hope you enjoyed. Peace.